Hi BookTube, my name is Juan. I'm just one reader and I have sucked at reading. I have to admit it, it's just not been my priority this past couple of weeks or even months. I just haven't gotten any reading done, like real reading done. I only read 3 books in the past month and a half, and so I just wanted to wrap them up with you in another video. So I'm going to do my recent reads numbers. I think it's 21 through 23, which is not a lot, but I just wanted to get this wrap up out of the way before I start my summer of reading, and then you'll be seeing a lot more from me. First book that I want to discuss in this wrap up is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the first book in the Raven cycle, which is a 4-book series of YA paranormal books. I don't usually read YA anymore. I'm kind of resistant, or at least I'm very critical when it comes to YA. Last year I read a lot of YA and it was more disappointing than not most of the times. So I'm a little bit more careful. But this one had gotten great reviews and it was really recommended by some really valuable people. And I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it like a 3.5 out of 5, I think. And it's a book that I definitely enjoyed, and I would actually recommend to many people who don't like YA like me, or who don't often read YA. You know what this book is about, and it has a lot to do with psychics and ley lines, and there's a quest that these Raven boys, these teenagers, have undertaken to find the location where a Welsh king is sleeping, and if they do eventually find him, they will be granted a favor by him. And we follow a different variety, a cast of characters, and in my opinion, that's what really made this book stand out. The characters. I really enjoyed the characters. In this one particularly, I enjoyed really much the character of Gansey, Adam, and Blue. They were just so wonderful to read about. And in terms of plot, sometimes it was a little bit confusing. I actually did a separate full review on this one, so you can go check it out on my channel. But yeah, so I really enjoyed the characters. I had some trouble with the plot because even though the premise was really promising, the way that it was developed in the plot lines in this first book, I found it a little bit confusing, the climax a little bit meh, but eventually I was really excited and I gave it a 3.5, a solid 3.5, because the characters were so amazing. And immediately I started reading The Dream Thieves, but I will not talk about it just now. Just give me 1 second, because I also started reading A Guide to Being Born by Ramona Ospel. I read this and The Dream Thieves simultaneously, but I want to talk about this one first because I finished it first and I'm just obsessive like that. So, A Guide to Being Born by Ramona Ospel is a truly wonderful and beautiful book. It's a collection of short stories that all have to do with the topics of birth, gestation, conception, and love. Actually, the collection is broken down into those like parts: birth, gestation, conception, and love. Some of the stories are filled with magical realism. Some of the stories are quite realistic or quite modest in terms of it's more of a subtle story. It's not that dramatic. Some stories are extremely dramatic and hit you. Like there's one story particularly which was just so amazing because it had this melancholy feel all the way through, but then at the ending was like, what just happened? Like, did you really do that? And it's actually the second story called Poppy Seed. It's amazing. Like honestly, I don't read a lot of short story collections, but this year I've made it my personal mission to read more collections, and so far I've read amazing collections this year. Magic for Beginners by Kelly Link, which is my favorite book of the year so far, and this one, which is also very high up. So what I loved the most about this one, just look at the cover. I mean, the cover is just stunning, and I think it really captures the essence of Osibel's writing. And what I enjoyed the most about this one is the writing style. Actually, the writing, because you can see that Ramona Osibel spent so much time and effort and dedication making sure that every single sentence was like velvet, and it definitely feels like a book that you should read out loud. And I actually did read most of the book out loud to myself because it was just so deliciously written, and every sentence was tight and perfect. It almost felt like clockwork, and yeah, it was just so beautiful. Like that's the adjective I would use. It was just beautiful. Some of the stories, like I said, are very subtle but equally beautiful, and some of the stories are quite surreal. And this book really takes you on a trip. And like I said, this book deals with topics that are inescapable. They're just things that everyone has to go through. So you have to connect to something in this novel, in this book. Um, and I found, most importantly, that even if all the stories were really good separately, once you finished reading, or at least this happened to me, once I finished reading it, I was mind blown, because this is one of those books, one of those collections where you definitely understand that the collection is much greater than just the sum of its parts. It becomes an entity of its own, and it's just brilliant. And every time I think about this book, I think of something different, and I am reminded constantly of its significance and its relevance and its beauty. So I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. It was almost perfection. And, I'm being very stingy this year when it comes to giving out 5-star ratings, but this one was definitely very close. All right. And the last book that I will be wrapping up today was the Dream Thieves, the sequel to the Raven Boys, by Maggie Stiefvater. And, well, I was very excited when I finished reading The Raven Boys, so I immediately went and picked this one up. Um, Initially, when I finished reading it, like I closed the book and I was very frustrated. I wanted to give it like a 2-star rating. I was really furious. But then now I've let it settle in, sink in, and I'm gonna give it a 3. I think it's a solid 3, because this book had really good highs but really bad downs. It was like a roller coaster for me. It was not an experience that I overall enjoyed. There were some moments when I wanted to just quit reading and just forget about the entire series. Whereas there were also moments where I couldn't stop reading for the life of me, and I was like obsessively reading it, compulsively reading it. The writing was a little bit inconsistent to me. I think that's the problem. The characterization, I have to admit, was still very good. We still uh, explored and found out a lot more about these characters, and we discovered some new characters as well. I think that added up to the story, or to the characters more precisely. The plot is where Maggie Stiefvater is losing me. I have to tell you, the plot of this one just felt really irrelevant, and really like it was just dragging on forever. This book is longer than your typical YA book. This is 437 books. It doesn't seem very long, but it is longer. But still, a 400-page book should not take me that much to read, and I couldn't read it. I spent probably 1 month reading this one because it was so inconsistent. My reading experience was equally inconsistent. I think that my experience was reflected in the writing, and the writing was reflected in my experience. Like I just didn't want to pick it up, and when I did, like, it was just kind of all over the place. Like I said, I really thought that the characterization was good. I enjoyed it. This one had actually really great passages in terms of writing. I just wanted to underline those passages because Meg Stiefvater delivered some really great paragraphs and descriptions of the characters, and I really loved it. But there were some other times when I felt like, what? This feels like cheap writing. So I ended up giving it a 3 star. I will continue on with the series because I really want to know what happens to these characters, but I will not be continuing on like right now. I want to, give it some time, put some space with it, and eventually when I pick it up, I'll pick it up and I hope I'll be happy because people usually say that the third book is really good. So, yeah. And before I go, I wanted to show you the book that I am currently reading right now. I'm talking about the Rabbitback Literature Society by Pasi Ilmari Jaskelainen. I've only started it yesterday. I've only read the first 4 chapters, but it is 100% fantastic so far. I am so highly enjoying it, and I cannot wait to finish it to be able to share my thoughts with you. So I hope you have a great reading week, month, whatever, and I'll see you next time.